Back again with another video reaction. My name is Josh. Thanks for checking out the channel. And if you click the thumbnail, you're here to check out some of the Critical Drinker. And he's talking about Five Nights at Freddy's, the new movie, I'm assuming, that just came out not that long ago, which I've actually done a review for on this channel. So if you haven't watched that one yet, definitely go check it out. But I'm also going to be rehashing some of those thoughts right about now. It was a movie that I was glad that I ended up not paying to go see it in the theater. I mean, I guess I did have to pay for Peacock, but at the same time, it was one that, it wasn't bad, I would say. It was just very kind of lackluster. It was nothing kind of what I expected based off of the trailers, and in all reality, the little bit I know about the video games. I'm not a super diehard Five Nights at Freddy's. I like the idea of the game, and I've seen it played a little bit, and it looked really freaky. But when I did see that Peacock was putting this out, and I believe it was a Blumhouse film, actually I'm pretty sure it was, because they kind of plastered that all over everything, and then I seen the trailer came out, and you're like, oh, this one's going to be, kind of vicious, Blumhouse style. They're going to keep it nice and fiscally sound, but at the same time, it's going to be nice and creepy and probably pretty violent. And the trailer kind of lent itself that way. Then you get to the movie, and if you haven't seen it yet, there's probably going to be some spoilers, so there's your warning. It's not very violent in all reality. I mean, it's definitely a kid's movie, which is, I think, fine. Like, again, this is a good segue for a lot of teenage, preteens, maybe late single digits, to kind of get into some more horror stuff and hopefully not freak them out tremendously. There were some cool graphics, I will say. I will say the actual animatronics looked really, really pretty cool. I just kind of wish they would have done more with, well, the story and the violence and stuff that goes with that one. The story itself was very kind of convoluted, and again, I'm not super familiar with the original story that went with it, but there's no way it could have been exactly the same as the movie, because that just wouldn't make sense in game form by any means. So I ended up just kind of giving it a middle-of-the-road ranking, I think like a 5 out of 10, something in that range. Again, I wasn't mad that I watched it, but I definitely will probably never watch it again. Like, even if there's a sequel coming out, they'd have to advertise a lot of improvements in that sequel for me to really want to check it out. But a couple of the characters in it I did really like. Matthew Lillard in that one was my favorite character for sure, and if you've seen the movie, you probably know why. I'm excited to see what the Critical Drinker thinks of this, because he is an interesting reviewer in his own right, and we tend to agree on a lot of the views, so I'm really curious to see what his video's like. He makes really good content, and there's really good editing, and it's just very well thought out. Alright, let's get it.
Five Nights at Freddy's really is a classic underdog story, a franchise that started life as a low-budget point-and-click horror game made by an indie developer who up until then was best known for producing such classics as Junkyard Apocalypse and Chipper and Sons Lumber Co.
That's pretty horrifying too, though. Your eyes.
The premise was simple but maddeningly addictive. You play as a nighttime security guard whose job it is to watch over a disused amusement arcade populated by animatronic animals. You do this through a system of security cameras scattered throughout the building. The only problem is, the animals have a nasty tendency to come to life and start roaming the corridors if you're not watching them closely, and if they make it all the way to your security office, well...
Had to do it.
Ah, shit! The game went on to become a smash hit and spawned an entire franchise of sequels, books, comics, and most recently, a feature film by everyone's favourite purveyors of low-budget horror, Blumhouse, who seem to be churning out movies quicker than Mike Zero shits out YouTube videos. And damn, it's already turned out to be one of the surprise hits of the Halloween movie season, raking in over $200 million against a budget of just $20 million. Shit man, Disney could only dream of profit margins like that.
That's true.
So I've got to admit, I was kind of curious to see what this movie was all about, especially since there's fuck all else to see right now. Is it a genuine horror classic or a derivative cash grab coasting on a familiar name? Well, fire up your security feeds and let's find out. The movie follows Mike Schmidt, a down-on-his-luck security guard with a troubled past who's just been fired from his latest job after assaulting a man that he suspected of abducting a child. The only job that his career counsellor can offer him is a nighttime security gig, but he turns it down at first because it would mean leaving his little sister alone every night. But with the money running out and his aunt threatening to sue for custody, he's left with no choice but to take up his new job at Freddy Fazbear's. At first it seems like any other tedious nighttime security gig, and Mike even manages to fit in some time for lucid dreaming while he's there. But it soon becomes clear that he's not alone, and something's definitely up with the old animatronic animals that were once designed to entertain children, but now have a far more sinister goal in mind. But what's really going on with Freddy Fazbear's? Why do the animals seem so interested in his young sister? Does the mysterious cop who shows up to help him know more than she's letting on? And is there some kind of connection to the disappearance of his little brother 20 years earlier? Adapting a point-and-click point-and-click game like Five Nights at Freddy's into a movie was always going to be a challenging prospect because let's be real here, it wasn't exactly heavy on plot and character development. The movie gets around this problem by fleshing out Mike's personal life and backstory and making them the centerpiece of the story. Most of the narrative is driven by his need to look after his younger sister Abby and protect her from his scheming aunt who wants to get custody so she can profit off the welfare checks and is willing to do almost anything to get what she wants. Fuck knows why they made her his sister instead of his daughter when there's like a 20-year age gap between the two actors, but whatever. They both do a good enough job and the chemistry between them is decent, so I'll let it slide, I guess. There's also a subplot about Mike's search for his little brother Garrett, who got abducted when Mike was still a child, and the incident's haunted him ever since. Lucid dreaming allows him to replay the event in his mind in the hopes of finding some clue that he missed at the time, and to be fair, these are some of the more interesting moments of the movie. It's just a shame that the script doesn't choose to do more with them. There's also Vanessa, a local police officer who seems to know more about the place than she lets on. And if you think it's a little suspicious that a gorgeous and extremely helpful cop just so happens to show up alone and take personal interest in a nighttime security guard at an abandoned arcade, telling him just enough to keep him invested, well, then you've clearly surpassed the target audience for this movie. I love how the film pulls out what it thinks is a surprise revelation about the sinister individual behind this whole thing when they're literally the only other character in the entire story. Most of this stuff is really just window dressing though. The real meat of the film's appeal is when the animals come to life and start attacking the humans. But does it actually measure up to the legendary jump scares of the game? Does it provide the same chillingly unsettling atmosphere of tension and paranoia? Well, not really, and I think this is where Freddy's falls short. The film straddles an awkward middle ground between gruesome horror and goofy laugh-inducing silliness, like it can't quite decide which direction it wants to go and so tries to do a bit of both. And because of that, it never really succeeds at either. Willy's Wonderland, which I guess is the most obvious film to compare this to, knew exactly how ridiculous its premise was and just decided, fuck it, let's go all in and have as much fun with it as possible. But here, the subplots about abductions, murders and childhood trauma don't really mesh with that kind of outrageous horror comedy, so you might think it would make sense to go the other way and make it super serious and violent. But again, the film never quite commits to an emotional tone. There's a lot of implied violence and gore, but most of it happens off screen and you only get to see the disappointingly limited aftermath. There's relatively few jump scares considering there's so much fertile ground for that kind of thing, and while the prospect of trying to keep track of the robots using faltering surveillance equipment and diminishing resources, knowing they're slowly closing in on you, could be the basis for some good tension, the film never really makes use of the most iconic plot device from the source material. Instead, it spends a lot of its runtime with the human characters, reminiscing about past events and personal hang-ups, and I couldn't help thinking, this isn't really why I came to see a Five Nights at Freddy's movie. 100%. At close to 2 hours, it's also relatively long and slow for what it actually delivers. Again, Willy's Wonderland was smart enough not to overstay its welcome and wrapped up in less than 90 minutes, but Five Nights at Freddy's kinda gets bogged down in all the interpersonal drama and ends up dragging frustratingly around the midpoint. It's not exactly the worst horror film I've ever seen, and if you're a fan of the games then you'll probably appreciate the little in-jokes and references, but I don't know man, it feels like a bit of a missed opportunity that succeeded mostly due to name recognition and a complete lack of competition right now. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.
Alright, so that was the Critical Drinker talking about Five Nights at Freddy's, and again, there's so many things that he said there that I talked about in my review too, so it's kind of bringing to the point of why I kind of enjoy this guy, because again, we have similar views on a lot of things, and a lot of things he talked about and actually edited in some video of things like Willy's Wonderland, which I think is a far superior film depending upon what you're looking for. I mean, it's definitely one, I think, as an adult and somebody that grew up with a lot of kind of gruesome but like over-the-top horror movies, that one knew what it was, and that one excelled at exactly what that was. This one, again, I think it could be very good for a very young audience or just very diehard fans of Five Nights at Freddy's. But much like he had said in the video, they don't really do much with the theme from Five Nights at Freddy's per se. They don't really utilize what the video game itself did very much, hardly at all. And to be fair, I have watched since after this one came out, because I do remember reading that it had a huge opening weekend. And to be fair, I don't know that there was a whole lot else out around then, but it also had very good advertising and marketing. I mean, I watched it, and I've never played the game before, so I mean, they had that going for them, and it had a big opening weekend, but then I think it also had one of the biggest drops from first weekend to second weekend, so I think it was around 70 75 to 80% drop in box office, which is a pretty significant drop, but it did also make a whole bunch of money that first one, so inevitably it's going to drop a pretty large percentage, but there's probably not as many people going around telling other people to go check it out or go rewatch it, really for a couple reasons. To me, it's most likely just because of the fact that the quality isn't that great. It's okay, again, and if you like it, that's awesome. But the other thing is also going to be that it's also available on Peacock. So if you did go out to the theater and pay to see it the first time, you're probably not going to go back and pay and see it again the second time if you already have Peacock, or if you want to utilize like the free month or the free week, whatever they have, and just go watch it at home. But I am interested ultimately if this is going to spawn a sequel. It probably will, just based off of that opening weekend, the gross that it made. I mean, if it was $200 million on a $20 million budget, yeah, I think that's probably going to get a sequel. So I'll be interested to see where they go based off of the story, because that story almost kind of completed, I guess, and I'm not sure exactly how they want to extend that into more. But if you have an idea, let me know in the comment section, and let me know what you thought of the movie. Did you agree with the Critical Drinker and honestly myself, because we had very similar thoughts on this one? Don't forget, like, share, subscribe. Go and hit that subscribe button if you would. That'd be fantastic. And as always, you're awesome. Peace out.